The Los Angeles courtroom buzzed with an electric tension that seemed to crackle in the air, a palpable energy that shifted dramatically when the defense attorney's words sliced through the proceedings like a knife. As allegations emerged about Christian Combs allegedly targeting underage guests at so-called FreakOFFs, the atmosphere transformed from routine legal proceedings to something far more intense. The shock rippled through the room, visible in the sudden stillness of spectators and the rapid-fire clicks of camera shutters capturing every moment. Without warning, Christian pushed his chair back with such force that it scraped audibly against the floor, his face draining of color as he rose abruptly. There was no attempt at composure, no polite nod to the judge or subtle exit strategy, just a determined march toward the exit that left his own legal team scrambling to catch up. The significance of this dramatic departure became immediately apparent as details emerged about what had prompted such a visceral reaction. According to court documents and witness statements, these FreakOFFs were allegedly meticulously planned events where boundaries were not just pushed but obliterated, often involving suspected sex workers, laced alcohol, and disturbing power dynamics. What made this particular revelation so explosive was the implication that minors had been present at these gatherings, transforming what might have been dismissed as adult consensual activities into something far more sinister. The prosecution's argument gained significant weight with this new information, suggesting a pattern of behavior that extended beyond isolated incidents. Photographers captured the moment with unrelenting intensity, their flashes illuminating Christian's path to the exit doors as he moved with purposeful strides. His body language spoke volumes, shoulders tense, jaw clenched, eyes fixed forward as if willing himself through the walls of the courtroom. This wasn't merely a strategic retreat, it was a full-scale withdrawal from the unfolding narrative that threatened to define him. The lack of any conciliatory gesture, not even a cursory acknowledgement of the court's authority, spoke to the depth of his reaction. Legal experts watching the proceedings noted how unusual such an abrupt exit was, particularly for someone whose family had long maintained a carefully cultivated public image. As the doors closed behind him, leaving behind a room filled with unanswered questions and heightened speculation, the implications of this walkout began to crystallize. It wasn't just about avoiding immediate scrutiny. This dramatic departure suggested a deeper crisis management strategy was at play. The timing couldn't have been more critical, coming precisely as the nature of the allegations shifted from problematic adult behavior to potentially criminal activities involving minors. In that charged moment, Christian's departure transcended personal reaction and became a calculated move in a much larger game of public perception and legal maneuvering. The allegations surrounding Diddy's infamous FreakOFFs paint a disturbing picture of meticulously orchestrated events that operated far beyond typical celebrity excess. According to detailed accounts from multiple sources, including former participants and staff members, these gatherings weren't spontaneous parties but carefully choreographed productions that took place on chartered yachts and luxury properties across Miami and Los Angeles. The operation reportedly involved a network of facilitators, including Diddy's own children, who allegedly played active roles in recruiting participants, managing logistics and documenting the events. Court documents reveal that these FreakOFFs featured what prosecutors describe as performance spaces, specially prepared areas equipped with professional lighting, sound systems, and multiple cameras set up to capture every moment. The involvement of minors in these alleged events has emerged as perhaps the most damning aspect of the ongoing investigation. Multiple witnesses, including singer Tanya Wallace, have come forward with accounts of observing underage individuals at these gatherings. Wallace's testimony specifically mentions seeing little people at one of Diddy's 2018 parties, raising questions about whether these were adults with dwarfism or actual minors being exploited. The distinction carries significant legal implications, as several accusers have alleged that some participants appeared to be as young as 9 years old. These claims align with the prosecution's broader narrative of a criminal enterprise that systematically manipulated vulnerable individuals through a combination of financial incentives, drug-facilitated coercion, and psychological manipulation. Behind the scenes, the operation allegedly relied on a sophisticated system of control and documentation. Former employees have described a process where guest lists were meticulously maintained, with special attention paid to first-time attendees. The presence of drugs, particularly GHB and other date-rape substances, was reportedly standard at these events, with some witnesses alleging that Diddy's inner circle would distribute specially prepared cocktails to ensure participant compliance. Security footage obtained during recent raids shows extensive storage facilities stocked with lubricants, party supplies and recording equipment, suggesting an industrial-scale operation rather than casual social gatherings. What sets these allegations apart from typical celebrity scandal narratives is the systematic nature of the alleged enterprise. Prosecutors argue that these weren't isolated incidents of poor judgment, but part of a pattern of behavior spanning decades. The indictment specifically references the Combs enterprise, describing it as an organized operation involving multiple properties, numerous staff members, and a rotating cast of participants. This characterization draws parallels to traditional organized crime structures, with Diddy allegedly serving as the central figure orchestrating activities across various locations. The inclusion of his children in these operations, particularly their alleged roles in recruiting and managing participants, adds another layer of complexity to the case, suggesting a family dynasty built not just on music industry success, but potentially on far more troubling foundations. The audio recordings presented in court provide perhaps the most chilling evidence yet in the case against Christian Combs, offering a raw and unfiltered glimpse into the alleged events aboard the chartered yacht in December 2022. Grace O'Marquez's voice trembles with anxiety as she repeatedly rejects advances, her protests captured in stark detail throughout the transcript. The recordings begin innocuously enough, with sounds of clinking glasses and casual conversation, but quickly escalate as Christian allegedly pressures Omar to consume tequila shots. Experts analyzing the audio note subtle changes in her speech patterns after each drink, suggesting possible drug contamination consistent with GHB exposure. Her increasingly slurred words and moments of confusion punctuate the recording, providing crucial context to the subsequent events. The most disturbing portion of the audio captures what appears to be a struggle, with muffled sounds and Omar's voice rising in panic as she demands that Christian stop touching her. The transcript shows her clearly stating, "Excuse me, you don't touch my legs like that," followed by increasingly desperate attempts to extricate herself from the situation. Prosecutors highlight how Christian allegedly ignored these explicit verbal boundaries, continuing his advances despite repeated rejections. The recording picks up sounds of movement, and Omar's breathing becoming more labored as she tries to escape, culminating in a moment where she insists on needing supervisor approval, a tactic witnesses suggest was meant to buy time while knowing all staff would be asleep. These recordings gain additional weight when considered alongside Omar's physical evidence. The photographs included in the lawsuit show distinct bruising patterns on her arms, consistent with defensive injuries and restraint marks. Medical experts reviewing the images note the timing and placement of these bruises align with the timeline presented in the audio recordings. Furthermore, the suit includes security footage timestamps that corroborate Omar's movements throughout the yacht, showing her initial interactions with Christian in the makeshift studio, her attempted return to work duties, and finally her escape from the cinema room where the alleged assault occurred. The prosecution argues that this multimedia evidence creates a comprehensive narrative that's difficult to refute. The audio captures intent and actions in real time, while the physical evidence provides tangible proof of the encounter's aftermath. Most damagingly, the recordings contradict Christian's team's characterization of the events as consensual, instead painting a picture of persistent unwanted advances and physical coercion. The metadata embedded in both the audio files and photographs establishes a clear chronological sequence, making it challenging to argue against the authenticity or context of the evidence. This convergence of digital documentation and physical proof represents a significant hurdle for the defense, as it directly challenges their narrative of manufactured allegations and irrelevant facts. The defense team's response to these allegations has centered on a multi-pronged strategy of technical challenges and character attacks, attempting to dismantle the prosecution's case piece by piece. Lead attorney Aaron Dyer wasted no time in filing motions to dismiss, arguing that the lack of verifiable metadata on the audio recordings raises serious questions about their authenticity and chain of custody. His arguments focus heavily on the absence of concrete evidence linking the alleged spiked drinks to specific chemical compounds, suggesting that Omar's reported symptoms could have resulted from voluntary alcohol consumption rather than deliberate drugging. Dyer's team has also challenged the reliability of the bruise photographs, questioning the lighting conditions during their capture and suggesting natural healing processes could have altered their appearance between the incident and documentation. However, the prosecution counters these technical defenses with compelling circumstantial evidence that paints a broader pattern of behavior. They point to the consistent testimonies of multiple witnesses describing similar experiences at other FreakOFF events, suggesting these incidents weren't isolated occurrences, but part of a larger modus operandi. The government's case benefits significantly from the temporal proximity of Christian's alleged actions to his father's broader racketeering indictment, creating a narrative of inherited criminal behavior. Prosecutors argue that the younger Combs' involvement in these events wasn't just participation but active contribution to maintaining and perpetuating the family's alleged criminal enterprise. The defense's most aggressive tactic has been attempting to discredit Omar's character and motivations, suggesting her lawsuit represents a calculated attempt to capitalize on the media frenzy surrounding the Diddy investigations. They've highlighted minor inconsistencies in her timeline and questioned why she waited nearly 2 years to file charges, implying ulterior motives. Yet these arguments face significant challenges when confronted with the documented psychological impact on Omar, including medical records detailing her subsequent mental health struggles and treatment for trauma-related disorders. The prosecution has effectively leveraged these records to demonstrate the lasting effects of the alleged assault, arguing that delayed reporting is common among victims of sexual violence, especially when perpetrated by individuals with significant power and influence. Perhaps most damaging to the defense's position is the mounting pressure from parallel investigations. While Christian's individual case progresses through civil courts, federal authorities continue their broader probe into the Combs family's activities. The overlap between these investigations creates a complex legal landscape where victories in one arena could significantly impact outcomes in others. The defense faces the daunting task of not only addressing the specific allegations against Christian, but also navigating the collateral damage from his father's high-profile criminal case. This dual-front battle complicates their strategy, as successful defenses in civil matters could potentially create contradictions with statements or evidence emerging in the federal racketeering investigation. The media's role in shaping public perception of Christian Combs' courtroom exit has evolved into a masterclass in modern sensationalism, with outlets racing to dissect every nuance of his dramatic departure. Social media platforms erupted within minutes of the incident, with hashtags like #ChristianWalkout and #FreakOFF fallout trending globally. Influencers and entertainment journalists alike scrambled to interpret the optics, many drawing direct parallels between this moment and previous high-profile celebrity scandals. The visual impact of Christian's abrupt exit, captured in perfect clarity by courtroom photographers, provided perfect fodder for endless analysis, with frame-by-frame breakdowns appearing across digital platforms within hours. Memes and reaction videos flooded social networks, each interpretation adding layers to the narrative that would shape public opinion faster than any official statement could counteract. Traditional media outlets amplified this digital frenzy through relentless coverage cycles, with cable news networks dedicating entire segments to debating whether the walkout signified guilt or strategic posturing. Legal analysts appeared on split-screen panels, their credentials scrolling beneath their faces as they passed every detail from Christian's body language to the timing of his departure relative to the allegations presented. The phrase "stormed out" became ubiquitous in headlines, reinforcing the drama of the moment while subtly influencing viewer perceptions. Major publications released hastily assembled pieces connecting this courtroom drama to the broader Diddy investigation, often recycling language from previous reports about the family's alleged activities without proper context or attribution. This media circus created a perfect storm of misinformation, where fact and speculation merged into a single narrative that proved it impossible to fully control. The speed at which information and misinformation spread made it nearly impossible for the defense team to issue meaningful corrections or clarifications. By the time official statements did emerge, the public consciousness had already crystallized around certain interpretations of events. The media's framing of Christian's exit as definitive proof of culpability, regardless of legal merit, demonstrated how modern news cycles can create their own reality, one where optics outweigh evidence and perception becomes its own form of truth. The intersection of privilege and accountability emerges as a central theme in the unfolding drama surrounding Christian Combs and the broader allegations against the Combs family empire. At the heart of this complex dynamic lies a fundamental question about the mechanisms that allowed such elaborate operations to continue unchecked for years. Court documents and investigative reports paint a picture of a system where wealth and influence created impenetrable barriers against scrutiny, with multiple layers of protection shielding the family's activities from meaningful oversight. The recent raids on Diddy's properties revealed sophisticated surveillance systems, private security forces, and contingency plans that speak to a level of preparation typically associated with corporate fortresses rather than residential estates. This infrastructure of privilege manifested in everything from the ability to charter entire yachts for private events to maintaining a network of facilitators and enablers who operated with impunity under the assumption that their actions would never face consequences. The current legal proceedings have begun to expose how this privilege operated as both shield and sword in the alleged exploitation of vulnerable individuals. Witnesses describe a culture where participants were conditioned to view their involvement as privileged access rather than potential victimization, with promises of career advancement or social elevation used to maintain compliance. The presence of minors at these alleged events, particularly those from disadvantaged backgrounds, highlights how systemic inequality intersected with extraordinary wealth to create opportunities for exploitation. Prosecutors argue that the Combs family's status created an environment where normal safeguards failed, background checks went unperformed, age verification processes were ignored, and basic ethical considerations were overridden by the presumption of invulnerability that comes with immense power. Yet this case represents more than just another chapter in the ongoing examination of celebrity accountability. It serves as a microcosm for broader societal issues regarding the intersection of wealth, influence, and justice. The public's reaction to Christian's courtroom exit underscores how deeply ingrained these power dynamics remain in our collective consciousness. Many observers initially interpreted his dramatic departure as confirmation of guilt, while others viewed it as evidence of a privileged individual unable to handle accountability. Both interpretations reflect underlying assumptions about how power operates within our legal system, assumptions that the prosecution must actively challenge to build a case based on evidence rather than preconceived notions of entitlement. The outcome of this legal battle holds significant implications for how society addresses accountability among the ultra-wealthy. If successful, the prosecution's case could establish important precedents for penetrating the protective layers that traditionally shield influential families from scrutiny. It may lead to reforms in how large-scale entertainment operations are monitored, particularly those involving private events and high-profile gatherings. Conversely, a defense victory could reinforce existing power structures, potentially emboldening others who operate within similar spheres of influence. Regardless of the final verdict, the proceedings have already exposed critical vulnerabilities in our systems of accountability, revealing how easily privilege can mutate from a protective mechanism into a tool for exploitation when left unchecked and unexamined. The trajectory of Christian Combs' future now hangs precariously between the weight of his father's legacy and the opportunity to forge his own path, shaped irrevocably by the current legal proceedings and their aftermath. Industry insiders suggest that even if cleared of all charges, the association with these allegations will fundamentally alter the trajectory of his burgeoning music career and entrepreneurial ventures. The younger luxury sneaker line, once positioned as a testament to his independent success, now faces potential partnerships dissolving as brands distance themselves from controversy. Streaming platforms have reportedly placed holds on promoting his upcoming releases, while collaborators like Cardi B find themselves navigating complex decisions about continued association. The music industry's notoriously short memory for scandal might eventually reset, but the shadow of these allegations threatens to linger far longer than any temporary hit to his commercial prospects. Legal experts watching the case closely point to several critical junctures that could determine whether Christian can successfully separate his identity from these allegations. The motion to dismiss presents his legal team's first major opportunity to draw clear lines between their client's actions and the broader narrative of family criminality. Success in isolating his case from his father's racketeering indictment could prove pivotal, though it requires walking a delicate tightrope between defending their client and avoiding statements that might implicate other family members. The discovery phase looms as perhaps the most dangerous period, where emails, guest lists, and yacht manifests could either exonerate or further entangle him in the web of accusations surrounding the Combs family's alleged activities. The public relations battle unfolding simultaneously presents its own set of challenges and opportunities. Christian's initial silence following the courtroom incident, while strategically sound from a legal perspective, has allowed the narrative to be shaped almost entirely by external forces. Social media analytics show a divided public response, with roughly equal numbers defending him as accusing him, creating a volatile environment where any misstep could trigger widespread backlash. Marketing professionals suggest that if and when he chooses to address the allegations directly, the approach must transcend traditional celebrity apology tactics, and instead focus on substantive commitments to change and accountability. This could involve stepping away from the family business entirely, establishing independent charitable initiatives focused on victim support, or using his platform to advocate for reforms in how the entertainment industry handles allegations of misconduct. Regardless of the legal outcome, the experience has already fundamentally altered Christian's position within the family dynamic and the public eye. Sources close to the family report increased tension between him and his father, with Sean Diddy Combs reportedly viewing his son's courtroom exit as a betrayal of family loyalty. This fracture could prove either beneficial or detrimental to Christian's attempts to establish independence, depending on how he navigates the complex interplay of familial obligation and personal accountability. The next few months will likely see intensified efforts from both sides, the prosecution working to connect Christian more firmly to the broader enterprise allegations, while his defense team attempts to portray him as a peripheral figure caught in the fallout of his father's alleged activities. How he balances these competing narratives while charting his own course forward will ultimately determine whether this crisis becomes a defining moment of redemption or a permanent stain on his legacy. The unfolding legal drama surrounding Christian Combs and the broader allegations against the Combs family empire sits at a critical crossroads where truth, perception, and justice intersect in complex ways. As the prosecution builds its case around the disturbing revelations of the so-called FreakOFFs, particularly those involving minors, the burden of proof remains paramount. The mountain of evidence seized during the raids, including extensive video footage, meticulous guest logs, and documented financial transactions, presents a formidable challenge for the defense. Yet the true test lies in connecting these pieces to specific criminal intent while navigating the minefield of public opinion that has already rendered its own verdict. The courtroom has become a battleground where legal standards wrestle with media narratives, and where the pursuit of justice must transcend both the spectacle of celebrity culture and the shadow of presumed privilege. The significance of this case extends far beyond the immediate parties involved, serving as a litmus test for how society addresses accountability among the powerful. It challenges us to examine our own complicity in enabling systems where influence can shield even the most egregious behavior, while demanding that we uphold principles of fairness and due process. The outcome will inevitably shape future investigations into similar cases, setting precedents for how law enforcement approaches allegations against high-profile figures, and how the justice system balances the scales between extraordinary privilege and fundamental accountability. As the legal proceedings continue to unfold, the nation watches not just for verdicts, but for indications of whether our institutions can rise above the noise of sensationalism to deliver measured evidence-based justice. The stakes couldn't be higher, for the alleged victim seeking validation, for a family dynasty facing potential dismantling, and for a society grappling with how to reconcile the American dream of success with the moral imperative of accountability.